In a forgotten desert bar, a man seeking peace was about to be tested. But the 5 wanted fugitives who walked in had no idea they weren't the predators, they were the prey. The night air in unincorporated Arizona was thick enough to drink, heavy with the scent of sun-baked creosote and distant rain that never fell. Tucked off a 2-lane blacktop that shimmered under a sea of stars was the Coyote's Howl, a cinderblock sanctuary for lost souls and weary truckers. Inside, the atmosphere was a familiar cocktail of quiet desperation. The air hung with the ghosts of cheap whiskey, stale sweat, and the fine red dust that seeped through every crack. From a battered jukebox in the corner, Johnny Cash sang about a ring of fire. At the far end of the polished oak bar, a man sat in stillness. He was a silhouette in black, a long-sleeve shirt, loose jeans, heavy boots. His dark hair was pulled back into a severe ponytail, accentuating the sharp, impassive lines of his face. He wasn't looking at anything in particular, yet he seemed to see everything. His posture was relaxed but perfectly aligned, his presence a pocket of profound calm in the restless room. This was Steven Seagal, and he was engaged in a form of moving meditation, finding his center in the gentle hum of the bar's neon sign. He had no entourage, no swagger. He didn't need one. He raised a single finger. The bartender, a man named Sal with a face like a worn road map, ambled over. "Club soda." Seagal's voice was low, a gravelly whisper that nonetheless cut through the music. "No ice." Sal nodded, recognizing the face from late-night movies but wise enough to keep it to himself. In a place like the Coyote's Howl, you didn't ask questions you didn't want the answer to. He placed the glass on the counter. Seagal gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod of thanks and took a slow sip. Then, the calm shattered. The front door flew open with a bang, slamming against the inside wall. 5 men spilled in, bringing a chill of violence with them. They were the Scorpio crew, a pack of bottom feeders who'd been cutting a bloody path across 3 states. They weren't just bullies, they were wanted for armed robbery, and their faces carried the grim, exhausted fury of men on the run. Their leader, a wiry man with dead eyes and a cruel twist to his mouth named Kane, surveyed the room like a wolf entering a sheep pen. The emblems on their leather vests had been crudely torn off, replaced by the raw, scarred leather beneath, a sign they betrayed one pack for their own. "Whiskey!" Kane barked, kicking a stool out of his path. "For everyone who ain't him." He jerked his chin toward Seagal. The few locals in the bar shrank into themselves. Sal nervously began pouring shots. The crew spread out, loud, obnoxious, their laughter echoing with malice. One of them made a crude remark to a woman sitting alone, who quickly gathered her purse and fled. Kane's dead eyes landed on the quiet man at the end of the bar. He saw the black clothes, the ponytail, the unnerving stillness, and read it as weakness. He swaggered over, his boots heavy on the floorboards. "Hey," he sneered, his breath a foul mix of stale beer and adrenaline. He leaned in close. "You got a problem? You look like you got a problem." Seagal slowly turned his head. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met Kane's. "No problem here." Kane smirked. He reached out, dipped a grimy finger into Seagal's club soda, and flicked the droplets onto Seagal's face. "Looks like you need to cool off, old man." Seagal didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. That wasn't enough for Kane. He grabbed the glass, and with a theatrical flourish, appended it directly over Seagal's head. The cold liquid streamed down his hair and onto his shirt. A collective gasp went through the bar. Kane laughed, a dry, ugly sound. "There. Better?" Seagal slowly, deliberately, placed his hands on the bar and rose to his feet. The motion was fluid, like a panther uncoiling. Every muscle shifted with a silent, terrifying promise. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. The jukebox fell silent as the song ended, leaving only the low hum of the beer cooler and the frantic thumping in Kane's chest. He had expected fear, or at least anger. He saw neither. What he saw in Seagal's eyes was something far worse, absolute certainty. "I came here for peace," Seagal said, his voice unchanged, a low rumble that vibrated in the sudden quiet. Water dripped from his ponytail onto the floor. Cain grinned, mistaking the calm for surrender. "And you'll leave in pieces." He raised his fists. It was the last confident move he would ever make. The attack wasn't an attack, it was a disassembly. Before Cain's brain could even register the threat, Seagal's right hand shot out, not as a punch, but as a flowing current of energy. He didn't grab Cain's shirt, he intercepted the man's forward momentum. There was a precise, almost invisible twist of Cain's wrist, a movement so subtle it looked like a handshake, and a surge of agony shot up Cain's arm. Seagal followed the motion with an elbow strike, not to the jaw, but to the pressure point just below the ear. Cain's eyes rolled back into his head. His entire nervous system momentarily shut down. He collapsed to the floor like a marionette with its strings cut, completely inert. One down. Before the others could process what had happened, Seagal spun. A second crew member was lunging forward, swinging a heavy pool cue like a bat. Seagal didn't block it. He moved with it, redirecting the momentum of the swing with an open palm. He used the attacker's own force against him, guiding the arc of the cue downward as he stepped inside the man's guard. A seamless joint lock followed, a graceful, spiraling motion that twisted the man's arm at an unnatural angle. The man screamed as Seagal sent him face first into the solid oak bar. The sound of bone meeting wood was sickeningly loud. 2 down. The remaining 3 stared, their drunken bravado vaporizing into pure terror. One lunged with a bottle. Seagal ducked under the wild swing, his movement impossibly fluid, and came up with a palm heel strike to the man's chin. Another knee strike to the solar plexus folded him in half. The last 2, seeing their comrades dismantled in less time than it takes to draw a breath, turned to run. Seagal took 2 swift steps and delivered a side kick to the back of each man's knee. They crumpled to the ground, howling in pain. 5 down. 10 seconds. The bar was utterly silent. Sal, the bartender, stood frozen, a glass in his hand that he dropped and somehow caught without realizing it. An old-timer in the corner booth stared, the lit cigar having fallen from his open mouth onto the table, slowly burning a black ring into the wood. Seagal stood in the center of the wreckage, his breathing even, his expression placid. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a clean, folded white handkerchief. He calmly wiped away a single drop of Cain's blood that had splashed onto the back of his hand. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he let the handkerchief flutter down to rest on Cain's unconscious chest. He turned and walked towards the door, his boots making no sound. The legend had just begun. Word of the fight spread faster than a desert brushfire. It didn't travel by word of mouth alone, this was the 21st century. Before Sal had even finished sweeping up the broken glass, a high-definition clip from a corner security camera had been leaked online. Uploaded to a local news aggregate's social media page, it exploded. The title was simple: Zen Master Destroys Thugs in Rural AZ Bar. Within hours, the hashtag Zen Master Destroys Thugs was trending. People watched, mesmerized, as the silent man in black dismantled 5 aggressive men with the brutal grace of a ballet dancer. Miles away, in the grease-stained guts of a derelict auto repair shop, the remnants of the Scorpio crew watched the video on a cracked smartphone screen. Cain sat on an overturned oil drum, a bag of melting ice pressed to his jaw, his face a mask of purple and black humiliation. His second-in-command, a mountain of muscle named Rhino, paced back and forth like a caged animal. He made us look like clowns. Rhino roared, slamming his fist against a rusty tool locker. On a small, flickering television in the corner, a local news anchor was detailing a recent armored car robbery. A still photo of the stolen vehicle flashed on screen, the same vehicle the crew had used to get to this godforsaken town. The report mentioned 5 suspects, armed and dangerous. Cain looked up from the phone, his eyes burning with a new kind of fear. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about survival. That man, he's not a fighter, he's a ghost. No record, no identity. We can't have a ghost drawing this kind of attention to us. Not now. He looked at the map tacked to the wall, their entire escape route marked in red ink. Seagal wasn't just a man who had beaten them, he was a variable that could get them all caught, or worse. We go back, Kane said, his voice low and venomous. We go back tonight. And we don't just beat him. We erase him. While they plotted their violent revenge, fueled by desperation and cheap whiskey, Steven Seagal was in another world entirely. As the sun bled across the horizon, painting the desert in hues of orange and deep violet, he stood alone on a vast expanse of sand. Barefoot, he moved through a series of slow, deliberate forms, a kata that was both a martial art and a prayer. He moved with the wind, his body a conduit for the ancient energy of the earth beneath him. He wasn't training for a fight. He was reaffirming his connection to the peace he had fought so long and hard to find. He was the calm. And he could feel the storm coming. The tranquility of the desert night was the first casualty. Long before they were seen, they were heard, a deep, guttural roar of engines that grew from a distant hum into a ground-shaking tremor. It was the sound of vengeance. A stolen, heavy-duty pickup truck, its front bumper reinforced with welded steel, screeched to a halt, perfectly blocking the entrance to the coyote's howl. Its high beams blazed through the windows, flooding the dim interior with blinding white light, turning the bar into a stage. Behind it, more vehicles rumbled to a stop. This time, there weren't 5 men. There were 12. The Scorpio crew had brought reinforcements, and they had brought hardware. Lead pipes, heavy chains, and, held loosely in the hand of one brute, the terrifying glint of a sharpened machete. Inside, the few remaining patrons scrambled for the back exit. Sal, his face pale, fumbled for the phone beneath the counter. He looked at Seagal, who had returned for his forgotten jacket and now stood near the center of the room. I'm calling the sheriff, but they're 20 minutes out, if we're lucky. Seagal gave a slow nod, his eyes fixed on the door. They won't need that long. The doors were kicked open. Kane stepped through the blinding light, his silhouette flanked by Rhino and the man with the machete. His face was swollen, but his eyes were clear and filled with a homicidal resolve. We checked, Kane said, his voice raspy. You're a nobody. No record, no name. That makes this easier. He gestured to the desolate landscape outside. When we're done, the desert is going to swallow you whole. Rhino menacingly wrapped a heavy chain around his fist, the links clinking together with a chilling finality. The rest of the crew fanned out, their faces grim, their hands clutching their makeshift weapons. They were a cornered pack, and their fear had curdled into pure rage. Seagal stood his ground, a pillar of stillness in the heart of the manufactured chaos. He looked past Kane, past the weapons and the angry faces, as if seeing something else entirely. You brought a storm, Seagal said, his voice barely a whisper, yet it carried across the room with unnerving clarity. But you forget. He raised his gaze to meet Kane's. I am the eye of the storm. The air crackled with tension. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then, with a collective roar, they charged. The ensuing chaos was not a brawl, it was a symphony of controlled violence conducted by a single, unwavering maestro. Seagal didn't meet their charge with equal force. He became a part of it, a whirlwind of black cloth and devastating precision that moved through their ranks like a phantom. The first man, swinging a lead pipe, found his attack met not by a block, but by an empty space where Seagal had been. As the pipe whistled past, Seagal kicked the leg of a heavy barstool, sending it sliding into the man's shins. The man howled and stumbled, and Seagal was already moving on. 2 more came at him from either side. He spun, grabbing one man's arm and using his momentum to hurl him directly into the jukebox. The machine exploded in a shower of sparks and shattered glass, the music dying with a final, mournful groan. He used the recoil from that throw to flow directly into a defensive posture against the second attacker, catching the man's punch and applying a wrist lock that brought the larger man to his knees, his face a mask of agony. Rhino charged next, the heavy chain whistling through the air. Seagal dropped low, the chain flying over his head, and swept Rhino's legs out from under him. The giant crashed to the floor, and before he could recover, Seagal delivered a targeted stomp to his shoulder, dislocating it with a sickening pop. Rhino screamed, his weapon rendered useless. The man with the machete lunged, a wild, desperate slash aimed at Seagal's head. Seagal sidestepped, letting the blade pass, and in the same fluid motion, whipped his own jacket off and expertly wrapped it around the man's arm and the weapon. With a sharp twist, he disarmed the man, the machete clattering to the floor. Seagal didn't hesitate. He picked it up. The remaining members of the crew froze, their eyes wide with terror as they saw the silent man now armed with their most fearsome weapon. Only Kane was left standing, his face a mixture of disbelief and pure hatred. He pulled out a telescoping steel baton and lunged. Seagal met the attack with the machete, not with the edge, but with the flat of the blade, deflecting the baton with a loud clang. The fight was short, brutal, and decisive. Seagal moved with blinding speed, using the heavy spine of the machete to deliver punishing, non-lethal blows. A sharp crack to Kane's collarbone. A brutal strike to his knee that shattered the joint. Another to his wrist, sending the baton flying. Kane collapsed, sobbing in a heap of broken limbs and shattered pride. He was completely, utterly defeated. Seagal stood over him, the machete held loosely at his side. The room was filled with the groans of the wounded. He looked down at the pathetic man on the floor. "Pain is a teacher," Seagal said, his voice cold and final. "And your education is now complete." He tossed the machete onto the bar. He turned to the wide-eyed, trembling Sal, who was still on the phone with the dispatcher. "The trash is taken out," Seagal said calmly. "They can handle the recycling." And with that, he walked out of the ruined bar and back into the desert night. The aftermath of the second battle wasn't just a story, it was an instant legend. The Scorpio crew was rounded up by the sheriff's department, their long run from the law ending in a pile of broken bones and humiliation at the Coyote's howl. The bar itself became an unlikely tourist destination. Truckers would detour for miles just to see the spot where it happened. The bartender, Sal, became the town's most sought-after storyteller. He eventually placed the soda glass Seagal had used and the folded white handkerchief he'd left behind under a small glass dome on the bar, a makeshift shrine to the quiet storm that had passed through. About a week later, a nervous teenager walked into the bar. He made a beeline for Seagal, who had returned as quietly as he had left, sipping a hot ginger tea that Sal now kept stocked just for him. "You're him, right?" the boy stammered. Seagal simply looked at him. "The Scorpio crew, before they found you, they hit my dad's gas station down the highway. Robbed him, broke his leg." The boy's voice cracked. "He's okay now. But I just wanted to say thank you." Seagal studied the boy for a long moment. Then he reached down, picked up a smooth, black pebble he'd found in the desert, and slid it across the bar. The boy picked it up. "What is it?" "Strength isn't about being unbreakable," Seagal said, his voice softer than the boy expected. "It's about knowing where to stand when the flood comes." The boy nodded, his eyes shining with tears and understanding. He clutched the stone and left without another word. Later that night, another figure appeared. A man in a tailored suit that looked completely out of place. He sat next to Seagal. "You're a hard man to find," the man said. He introduced himself as Agent Thorne of the Strategic Response Division, a government entity so clandestine it didn't officially exist. He slid a small, featureless satellite phone across the bar. "We have situations. Quiet, dangerous situations that require a man of your unique talents. No flags, no countries. Just results." Seagal looked at the phone, then out the window at the vast, dark expanse of the desert. He didn't touch the device. "Some of us fight battles so we can finally earn our peace," he said, turning to face Thorn. "I've earned mine. Your wars are your own." He stood up, left a $10 bill on the counter for the tea, and walked to the door. Thorn didn't try to stop him. Seagal stepped outside, melting back into the shadows from which he came. He left behind a legacy, a bar full of stories, a town that slept a little safer, and a young boy holding a simple black stone, learning that true strength wasn't in the fist, but in the will to stand firm. The story of what happened at the Coyote's Howl is now a piece of desert lore, a warning to those who bring violence to quiet places. It's a reminder that you never truly know who you're dealing with. What do you think? Was Seagal a hero, or just a man who wanted to be left alone? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We ask that you please be respectful in the discussion. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of unexpected legends. Thanks for watching.